Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, ranking the classic era live albums from my original 6 bands. I made a video not that long ago about my original 6 bands. These were the bands that I first discovered when I was getting into hard rock and heavy metal. They were my favorite bands back then. They're still my favorite bands today. They were the bands that influenced me and shaped my taste in hard rock and heavy metal. I thought it would be fun to rank the live albums from their classic eras. Now, what I mean by that, I don't necessarily mean the lineups of the bands. I mean the albums that came out when I was really into them, when I was a teenager. So the stuff from the 70s and the stuff from the 80s. These bands would go on to release many more live albums, but I'm not going to be ranking all of those, because for some of them, like for instance Judas Priest during the Ripper era, I just lost track of Judas Priest. I wasn't following them during that time. I wasn't as into them, so those live albums didn't really register with me as much. Iron Maiden has released a ton of live albums in the last 20 years or so, but I'm going to be sticking with the classic stuff from the 70s and the 80s when I was a teenager, when I was really focused in on these bands, and these were the live albums that really hit me. All right, so I've got 9 albums, and I'm going to be putting them in order. The albums that we have to pick from here, this is not the order, but the albums that I have to pick from here are AC/DC, If You Want Blood, Black Sabbath, Live at Last, Live Evil, Iron Maiden, Live After Death, Judas Priest, Priest Live and Unleashed in the East, Dio Intermission, and Ozzy, Speak of the Devil, and Tribute. Okay? All right, so that gives us 9 records. So coming in at number 9 for me is Priest Live. This comes in at 9 for me because at the time I didn't like the Turbo album. It's grown on me a little bit as time has gone on. So I had checked out from the band just a little bit. I do appreciate the fact that they didn't repeat anything from Unleashed in the East. It's all stuff from the 80s era, and there is some really cool stuff on here. I like, for instance, Out in the Cold and Turbo Lover, I think sound much better live here than they did on the studio versions. And there's a lot of great stuff on here. Love Bites, Some Heads Are Gonna Roll, The Sentinel, Freewheel Burning. At the time, I was a little burnt out on hearing like Living After Midnight and Got Another Thing Coming. And also there were some things on here, songs that I just did not like from them, like Rock You All Around the World, Parental Guidance, Private Property. So when it came out, it just didn't click with me as much. It's actually grown on me over time, and it's an album that I've revisited, and I think that the band sounds really great, and it's grown on me over time. A absolutely drab album cover, though. All right, that's at number 9, Priest Live. Number 8 for me is Dio Intermission. I wasn't gonna include any EPs in this list. For instance, Made in Japan. I'm not including that because I didn't get Made in Japan till later, and that's only, I think, 4 songs on that. And I don't know if this is actually considered an EP. It's got 6 songs on it, but I know side 2 of this comes in at like 17 minutes, which is longer than the average like Van Halen record, from the David Lee Roth era. Those albums always came in at like 15, 16 minutes aside. So I thought I would include it because I really liked this when it came out, and it was the only live album that Dio put out in the 80s, and from that classic Vivian Campbell era of the band. And I wish they had put out a double album from like the Sacred Heart tour, because I love Vivian Campbell. I love those first 3 records. This is still cool. It's got a studio cut on it, Time to Burn, which features Craig Goldie, who had just come into the band. So it comes in at 8 just because it just doesn't have a lot of songs on it. And I wish there had been a proper Vivian Campbell era live album. Okay, 7, I almost said Judas Priest. Black Sabbath, Live Evil. Absolutely incredible album cover. I always loved this album cover. And when this came out, I was totally into it. It hasn't aged as well for me. And part of that, I think, is it's well known that the band was fighting and Dio and Vivian would leave right after this came out. The album sounds like it was just touched up too much in the studio. The audience sounds like they're a million miles away, so it doesn't feel like a live record. They will go on years later to release Live at the Hammersmith Odeon. That's what this album should have sounded like. That album sounds amazing. This sounds like it was just touched up too much in the studio. And I also don't like Dio on some of the Ozzy songs. Dio's my favorite metal singer of all time, but he just doesn't work for me on like NIB and the song Black Sabbath. He does work on Children of the Grave, for instance. I think he sounds great on that. But it's a good record. It's just that it could have been much better. Hasn't aged particularly well for me. Okay, what was that? 9, 8, 7. I'm on 6. Ozzy, Speak of the Devil. When this came out basically the same time. I think a week before Live Evil. I liked Speak of the Devil better. The set list was better. You get some really cool stuff like Symptom of the Universe and The Wizard and Never Say Die. The band sounds great. Rudy Sarzo, Tommy Aldridge, Brad Gillis. I really like the way Brad Gillis plays some of these songs. I wish Brad could have hung around for a studio album. It's well known that this was a contractual obligation. They owed this album to get out of a management contract with Don Arden, who was Sharon Osbourne's father. And so they just sort of slapped this together. Ozzy's voice he redid all his vocals in the studio. They cut some of these songs during sound check, but it's still great. It sounds live. The band has a ton of energy. You know, they're probably on the edge of their seats playing this because they really didn't have any chance to rehearse this. I think they recorded 2 nights. They recorded for this, but the set list does it. It's just got a lot of energy, and as when I was younger, I just really liked this. So, all right, we are at, let's see here, 9, 8, 7, 6. Okay, we're at 5, which is Live at Last from Black Sabbath. For me, really liked this when I was younger. I still like it. The set list is good. You get some deeper type cuts like Cornucopia, Tomorrow's Dream with the Jam and Wicked World is pretty cool. What it does suffer from, though, is it suffers from the mix is not particularly good. This was another, I did a video on unauthorized releases and bootlegs. This was something unauthorized, meaning it wasn't endorsed by the band. An ex-manager had the rights to this and put it out without the band's approval. So it was just sort of slapped together. The cover is terrible. Even the vinyl is like a cheap, flimsy vinyl. Should have been a double album. There's like 27 minutes of music on the second side, 28 minutes of music, which is insane for a vinyl record. It's not mixed particularly well. The Volume 4 box set does a remix of this that just sounds fantastic. But it's cool to hear at that time, especially. I'd never heard any live Ozzy era Black Sabbath, so I was totally into this, and the set list was really cool. It's just the mix and everything of it maybe drops it slightly lower on my list here. Okay, I am at 1, 2, 3, 4. Ozzy and Randy Rhoads tribute. I am a huge Randy Rhoads fan. When this came out, I was just so excited for this. Hearing Randy playing live is incredible. The set list is great. I just love this record. Really, everything from here out is I love. I like all these live albums, but this is really getting into 10 out of 10 territory now. Hearing the studio outtake D, where you get to hear Randy's voice. I'd never heard Randy's voice at that time, so I just love this record. Classic Randy Rhoads. All the pictures of Randy on the inside and everything, and on the sleeve and all that. It was just a very great tribute to Randy. All right, we're at number 3 here for me from the classic era of my original 6 live albums, and Judas Priest Unleashed in the East. This is just a fantastic live album. I put that in quotes because it's now well known. Rob Halford mentions this in his biography, that he had to redo all the vocals, but who cares? It still sounds great. They give some of the songs from the studio albums a little bit more fire, a little bit more energy. The set list is totally cool. I mean, Exciter, Victim of Changes, Diamonds and Rust, Green Manalishi. Can't get the record out, but you know, all this genocide, tyrant. You know, it's all amazing. It's a fantastic record. I like the fact that it's a single album. I've mentioned this before, that I really dig single live albums because it just feels like, you know, you're just really jamming all the great stuff in there. You're cutting out the you know, the drum solos and the keyboard solos and all that kind of stuff. So this is a fantastic live album. I just did a video ranking the 70s era Judas Priest albums. Check that out. And some people asked where I would have ranked this in there, which is always hard to do with a live album, but just an incredible live record. All right, number 2 for me, AC/DC, If You Want Blood, another single disc, single record live album. I love this record. I'll probably do something more in depth on all these at some point. Love the album cover. Love the back cover there with Angus. Just the choice of songs is great. Riff Raff, Rock and Roll Damnation. You get the band like the Jack, has different lyrics in it. Bad Boy Boogie has some extra guitar soloing from Angus. Let There Be Rock has an extra, you know, Angus playing guitar by himself. Just tons of energy and fire. The crowd is in there. The crowd chanting Angus at the beginning of a whole lot of Rosie. Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be. Just absolutely. I had to check to make sure that was on there. Yeah, just absolutely incredible. I love this. This is just a fantastic live album. They're a band that sounds like they play live in the studio, but then just it really captures the energy of the band, in my opinion. All right, and number 1 for me is Iron Maiden, Live After Death. This is the mother of all live albums from, you know, my classic original 6 bands. When this came out, man, Maiden was just at the peak of their powers. Talk about a perfectly timed live record. This is it. Double live album, so there's just tons of songs on here. Sounds great. Although as time has gone on, I realized that Bruce sounds a little bit tired here. You hear some other live stuff from this era, and you know, they were touring just like forever for this record. It's amazing but he still sounds amazing, and the band sounds great. The set list is just perfect. It's the band at the peak of their powers. Fantastic. You couldn't ask for anything more from here. They do some Diano stuff. They do stuff from every album, you know, up to this point, and it all just sounds amazing. The packaging is incredible on it, and it's got all these little infos and the pictures on the inside, so it's just fantastic. My number 1 live album from my original 6 bands. All right, there you go. What do you guys think? What do you think of some of these live albums? How would you have... Whoops, I thought I just... I just heard the record shifted up there, and I thought something was falling. How would you have ranked these records? I know that these are my original 6. Maybe what are your top live albums from your favorite hard rock and heavy metal bands? I'm going to do a separate video on my ranking of, or some of my favorite 70s era live albums for this one. You know, this one's going to be on the list. I was going to make a video just on this album, and then this other idea hit me, and I thought, let's just do this. So I'm going to have another video, 70s era live stuff. That'll be coming up soon. But let me know some of your favorite live albums from your favorite bands from the classic 70s, 80s era. All right, let me know in the comments down below. Until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.